Join me as we traverse the winding path of innovation to your guide to decoding today's emerging tech to reveal tomorrow's world. That introduction was written by Claude, the AI chatbot from Anthropic. But I'm definitely human. My name is Rick Huckstep and welcome to Wiser. Now, the first story I want to talk about this week is Google's free utility strategy for AI. Well, that's what I call it anyway. And it's in this kind of race for the AI gold rush, which is essentially between OpenAI stroke Microsoft and Google. Now, Apple will enter, Amazon are starting to do things with Alexa, and you've got all the other players like Anthropic and Inflection. But this is really a two-horse race in terms of the domination for the mainstream users of technology. A Wiser reader sent me an article from The Economist this week, and it was about OpenAI, and it asked the question, is OpenAI the next big tech giant? Now, the article makes the case that OpenAI is putting together the building blocks for the AI generation, and much of it I agree with, right? I mean, they're blazing the trail while others are following. And the story does make a compelling point. After all, who knows if OpenAI will join the big 4, 5, 6, however you want to count big tech. But where I diverge from the article is that, in my honest opinion, the key player isn't OpenAI. It's Google. And just like they've done with internet search, they're going to do the same with AI. They're going to make Google's versions of AI ubiquitous. So if we go back 25 years, we, the people, right, the users of the internet, have gotten used to one thing, and that is that it's free. Right? Nobody pays for email, nobody pays for search, although Neeva did try to introduce a paid search engine and they failed. Social media is free, although the man-child is talking about charging a small amount to use Twitter. That will fail, and it's just another sort of nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned. My point is that we, the people, like that the internet is free. We are willing to give up our data and privacy in order to get all of this free stuff that, to all intents and purposes, make this stuff public utilities. And the same is going to happen with AI. It's a path that Google have trodden before in search. So let's have a look at search. And we've got to start really with what kicked off last week in the United States, which is the most significant antitrust tech trial in 25 years. The last one being Microsoft with Internet Explorer in 97, I think it was. Now, this lawsuit hinges on the fact that since 2010, Google has paid companies like Apple and Samsung to make Google the default search engine on mobile phones and computers. And they spend, according to prosecutors, Google spends $10 billion a year to pay for these agreements, to make them the default search engine. Now, users can turn it off, they can change. I use DuckDuckGo. But the thing is, most users don't. They just use whatever is on the phone. And that has led to the fact that Google has now been able to maintain what's got a 90% share of the internet search market. So 9 in every 10 searches on the internet is done with Google. Now, Google's main defense is simply that no other tech company has made a competitive product that can beat Google search. And it is a fair point. Google has indexed 2 or 3 times more of the internet than anybody else. Their ability to target advertising produces a 20 to 30% better return on investment compared to, say, Microsoft's Bing search engine, which is number 2. Google search is a money-making flywheel. The more that people use it, the better it gets, and so more people use it. And last year, Google made $160 billion from search. And that accounted for 57% of all of Google's total, or Alphabet's total revenue. The question, though, is if Google is so much better than anybody else, why do they still need to spend $10 billion a year keeping everyone else out? And that is the essence of the Department of Justice's antitrust case against Google. That's going to rumble on. The question is, what's that got to do with AI? Well, to me, the point is that this model has already been set by Google, and we're now going to see it again with AI, and that's the case that I'm making. Now, Google has built their defensive moat for search by making Google a thing, right? It's a verb in its own right, just like Hoover became the noun for vacuum cleaners. I'm going to hoover the floor. Well, Hoover was a product. And just like nowadays, we all say, I'll Google it. I mean, even I say I Google it, and I don't use Google. I use DuckDuckGo, and I now use Bing search much more because of their AI capabilities. But I still say I'm going to Google it, even though I'm using Bing. And so Google has managed to make search a thing, and they're going to do exactly the same with AI. Just like they make search a free utility, they'll make AI a free utility. And that is how Google are going to dominate this space. Now, this week, Google announced a ton of new AI features for its free-to-use apps and its workspace products. Right? Okay, this is the equivalent in Google to say Microsoft Office, is what they used to call it, Word and PowerPoint. Well, Google have Google Docs, Google Sheets, they have Gmail, which is the number one email platform in the world. And users can also connect to things like YouTube and Google Maps and travel, and they can connect all of these through what's called extensions into Google Bard. Now, Google Bard is the Google equivalent to ChatGPT. And there is a new version coming out, which is called Gemini, but that's not hit the roads yet, and that's supposed to be even better. But Google Bard now has these things called extensions, and that allows Google Bard's AI capability to integrate with all of these free apps that we are so used to using. And basically, this allows users to leverage the power of AI, and it gives Bard access to all of the different parts of your Google account. Now you can add an AI engine called Bard to help you process all of that data. And I'll give you an example. So if you're planning a holiday, for example, you could go into Bard and ask Bard to find you the dates that you know are buried somewhere in an email, in your Gmail account, and it could take that and then use its Google travel capability to find you the flights and the hotel options using Google search. And it can even build you an itinerary based on the information, and it might dip into YouTube to come up with good ideas. So you can drive all of that now from using AI from Google Bard by giving Bard access into your Google world. Of course, if you're an Apple user, this doesn't really work very well because you can't do it if you're all on the iCloud. But if you're Android based and you tend to rely on Google and Gmail and Workspace and all those kind of things, then this is a new capability that's free for you to use today. What they've also added is what they call the double check tool. And this is a fact checking facility. So if you go into Bard and you ask it to, you're planning your holiday and you ask it for certain information, you can verify the answers are being supported by genuine information available on the web, and that it's not been made up through some hallucination by the artificial intelligence. And this makes Bard, in my opinion, from what I can tell, the first major AI tool that fact checks itself in real time to make sure it's more accurate and reliable. And you're going to see more of this when Google roll out search, AI in search, which is coming now. It's in beta, but if you're like me living in Spain, you can't use it because it's only available for limited users in the United States, Japan and India, I think. Now, just to be clear, Google has made it clear that users can be secure in their knowledge that their private data is not going to be used to train the AI, and these features are opt-in only. That's what they say. Take them at their word. Now, I've been using Bard extensions over this last week, and my first impressions are that it's really cool, to be honest, when it works. Now, it's fair to say that this is obviously our first version, and the functionality is limited, right? So it's not going to do everything for you straight away, but new features are coming all the time. But when it works, it's pretty good. And I'll give you an example. So I have a property in the UK, and I had a long-running dispute with the insurance company who frankly have been dicking us around for 3 years. And I needed some information on this long-running insurance claim, and I knew that it was in all of my emails. And I knew I had to go dig this information out, so I made myself a cup of tea, got myself a plate of digestives, and I was all ready to start sort of wading through emails, reading one after another to try and find information. And then I thought, no, I'm going to test Bard. And I asked Bard to get me the information, which it did, bingo, within seconds. Google Bard had opened my Gmail account, read all my emails, found the information I wanted, summarized it, and it gave it back to me in an answer. It didn't even just like dump a load of data for me to sort it all out. It actually just gave me the answer. And, and it's for free. And that's the point I want to keep bringing everybody back to, which is that this is what they've done with search. And Google can afford to do that because they've got deep pockets, which is what I'm going to come on to. Now, health warning, this is the first version of Bard. It's still in its infancy. It does take us one step closer to the integration of AI into our daily lives, but it's not yet there. But this is what's coming. And as a parallel, last week, Amazon unveiled new updates to Alexa. Now, I'm going to cover Amazon's strategy next week, probably. But, where Amazon dominate is in the home, right? Home technology. And Alexa was the key, but Alexa always kind of failed, and it really would just become a glorified clock and a radio player. But now in Amazon's latest updates, they've integrated generative AI, and you can have a proper conversation with Alexa, and that's quite exciting. So, you're seeing how the big tech players are going to use their size and their presence to roll out AI and it become integrated into our daily lives. Now, what about OpenAI? Because they are the undisputed market leader in generative AI at the moment. And on performance, ChatGPT, certainly GPT-4, beats everybody, right, in terms of performance. It certainly beats Claude, which is its closest rival in terms of capability. Purists will probably argue that there's lots of differences because Claude will take bigger inputs and so on and so on. But generally, ChatGPT and GPT-4 is pretty much at the top of the pile. And OpenAI are building on the momentum that they established from last November when they really kicked off the generative AI thing. And they're rolling out new features after new features, and all credit to ChatGPT and OpenAI. They're making ChatGPT the word. So just as I talked about Hoover and, we're going to Google it when you're looking for search. When people talk about ChatGPT, they really talk about generative AI. And I'm seeing already people talk about ChatGPT, and it's something to do with OpenAI. They're talking about other tools, but it's just defining the whole segment. And there's no question that OpenAI are at the forefront of the AI gold rush. And they have the momentum, and at the moment, they have the cash. They just don't have as much cash as Google. Because despite the reports that OpenAI is now making, say, $1 billion a year in revenue, and they've raised, I think, $14 billion so far in investment, that's still only like 270 of what Google make a year as Alphabet. Okay, because Alphabet makes $270 billion last year. So Google has much deeper pockets. And as I said earlier, 4.7 billion people a year are on Google. Now, it's also worth saying that there is another factor that is worth considering when we talk about OpenAI. And although they've got Microsoft as their largest backer, there is a unique structure to the OpenAI company that may become its biggest constraint, because OpenAI is a not-for-profit business with a twist. So in 2019, OpenAI created what they call a capped profit company within their non-profit structure. And this gave investors the opportunity to make 100 times their initial investment. However, rather than distributing equity, which is normally what happens when people put their money into a startup, OpenAI distribute profit participation units. Basically, they provide some claim on future profits without ownership rights. It's very unique, and it does mean that OpenAI are able to reinvest all of their profits back into the development of the AI capability until the board decides that they've achieved their goal and they can start giving money back to the investors. But it's a unique arrangement and it's unusual, and I don't know, it just doesn't sound like it's sustainable in the very long term. But the thing is that putting money into OpenAI right now is more like making a donation than a conventional investment. So whilst OpenAI has raised about $14 billion, and they have the likes of Microsoft as the largest one, and these are deep-pocketed backers, which are crucial to OpenAI, the company does require substantial capital to continue to acquire the necessary data and computing power to continue developing increasingly better AI models. And it's just a battle they're going to lose compared to the capability and the resources and the size of the pockets of Google and Alphabet. So considering the financial resources and profitable cash flow that Google possesses, it may be challenging for OpenAI as a single-purpose startup to compete on the same level. While OpenAI has made a significant stride in generative AI and has gained momentum in the industry, Google's dominance and frankly larger financial capabilities present a formidable challenge. Nonetheless, OpenAI's innovative approach and ongoing advancements in AI continue to attract attention and support from investors, which all means that it's going to be hard for OpenAI. And no matter how much you like Sam Altman and he's a pretty likable guy. The reality is that Google has much deeper pockets and a highly profitable cash flow that dwarfs theirs. Plus, Sundar Pichai is also a pretty likable guy. Now, here's the thing. Google has been the pioneer in generative AI. In 2017, they invented the T in ChatGPT. T is for transformer, the approach to AI development that fundamentally changed the way AI was being developed in 2017 to what they now call the transformer approach. But then OpenAI did steal the march last November with ChatGPT, and that led to a flood of alternative chatbots like Claude and Bard and Llama 2 and Pi and so on and so forth. Venture capitalists have poured over $40 billion into AI firms in the first half of 2023, and that's nearly a quarter of all VC money this year has gone into AI. So Google has needed to respond quickly, and they have done. Bard was their answer to ChatGPT. Frankly, it's clunky, awkward, and I hardly use it myself ahead of this week, but I think these extensions do change the game. And then, of course, it's all about to change again with Gemini, a soon-to-be-released alternative that is reportedly much better than GPT-4. But the final piece of this jigsaw in terms of making Google the ubiquitous AI solution with its tentacles in every part of our daily internet lives is when Google rolls out AI search. They call it Search Generative Engine, SGE. It's an awful name, but it does have some impressive capability. And at the moment, it's restricted to users in the US, Japan and India, and it's still in beta mode. And they're being very cautious about this because its purpose is to combine AI and search to improve the search experience, but without completely cannibalizing the advertising revenues that come from presenting the links. Because remember what I said to you earlier, they make $57 billion a year from advertising on search results. They don't want to give that all up by saying AI is just going to give you the answer. They still want you to look at a long list of links because those links are being presented to you by people that are willing to pay the most to be at the top of the search results. They're not necessarily the best search result for your query. They're who's paying the most to be there. So these new features from Google have struck a chord with me in the same way that Zuckerberg leveraged 1 billion users on Instagram to launch Threads as an alternative to Twitter. Pichai has leveraged the 4.3 billion users that use Google's portfolio of services to launch his suite of AI tools. And like search, they're free. Google do have deep pockets, remember. They can afford to do this. And if they're willing to spend $10 billion a year to keep search as the market default, how much are they willing to spend to make their version of AI the default for you? It's an unfair advantage, but you can't blame them for exploiting it. Okay, let's look at some of the other stories from my newsletter this week. First up, Deutsche Bank is running a series of AI pilot projects that are scheduled to be launched next year. The bank has identified use cases that include automated client briefings and a chatbot to handle corporate banking inquiries. The bank demonstrated an AI system in one use case to show that the AI could effectively perform the tasks of a junior banker. The AI tool facilitated client briefings and generated reports to assist investment bankers in preparing for client meetings. Now, here's the thing. The reason I chose this story is because it perfectly illustrates how some, not all, major corporations are tackling the adoption of AI. They're focused on the activities that do not rely on human input. That's the key point here, right? You don't want to replace things that need to be done by humans. You can replace things that don't need to be done by humans, such as gathering data, like reading my email list, looking for insurance information, compiling standard reports, even answering routine questions. Deutsche Bank are no newcomers when it comes to AI, remember. In 2019, okay, so that's going back 4 years, the bank reported it had saved 680,000 hours of manual work using AI. And the point is that, thanks to generative AI, what would typically require a team of junior bankers a day or two to compile can now be produced in a matter of minutes. And the bank has expressed its intention to double or even triple the current number of about 400 staffers that are working on AI-related projects. Now, do you know what I mean when I say regulatory capture? It's when regulations to control an industry are defined by the industry themselves. And history tells us it always favours the incumbents. And that's what's happening in AI. Now, last week there was a big meeting that took place in the United States. AI tech executives, including Sam Altman, Musk, Sundar Pichai, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and the NVIDIA CEO, Jensen Huang, they met with others with the US lawmakers in a closed room forum to discuss AI regulation. Why it was a closed door, we don't know. The purpose was apparently so that US lawmakers can be educated on the issues of AI regulation. However, the New York Times reported how the tech executives pushed differing agendas in the room and expressed disagreement over issues like open source AI development. Plus, there was the usual narratives. Musk warned of existential risks from AI, the end of humanity, while Pichai and Zuckerberg highlighted AI's potential benefits as well as the need for transparency. Yada, yada, yada. Here's the thing. Sounds great, doesn't it? That these busy corporate executives give up their precious time to educate a bunch of crusty old fuddy-duddies about how they should write the laws to regulate tech. After all, Musk, Altman, Zuckerberg have been calling on AI to be regulated for months. But here's the question you have to ask yourself. In whose interests are they acting? Because history tells us that, especially in the United States, with its systemic reliance on lobbying and political donations, that when industries are regulated, the incumbents win. Google, Meta, OpenAI and Microsoft were all in the room trying to shape the regulations, but to what end and whose benefit? Now, I'm all for regulation, but I'm cynical about asking the people most impacted by them to also write them. And if you want to know more about this, check out Bill Gurley's fantastic video on YouTube called 2,851 Miles. And he makes the point by saying the reason Silicon Valley has been so successful is because it's so fucking far away from Washington. Anyway, I would highly recommend that. Now, finally, here's a quick roundup of other headlines. eBay has introduced an AI tool called Magical Listing to help sellers create an appealing and attractive product list. That's for sellers that don't have creative skills themselves. Amazon has seen a massive rise in the number of AI-generated ebooks listed on Kindle. Now, then insisting that authors and publishers declare if they've been auto-generated by AI, which frankly is a hopeless task, because who's going to do that and why would they do that? And there's no way to police it. Because despite what anybody tells you, there is no AI checking tool in existence. Warner Music has signed a record deal, which is a first in the music industry, because they've signed a deal with an AI virtual pop singer known as Nunuri, if I've said that right, who already has over 400,000 followers on social media. Google DeepMind has developed an AI called Alpha Missense that predicts whether genetic mutations are harmful or benign in DNA. By analysing 71 million mutations, it determines that 57% were likely harmless and 32% was harmful. The point is, the model outperformed current predictive tools, offering faster and more precise insights. Now, TikTok. Their e-commerce live shopping experience is finally rolling out in the United States. Now, no one has managed to get social commerce, i.e. influencer-led live stream shopping, to work outside of China, where it is huge. If anyone can do it in the United States, TikTok can. And to be honest, in my opinion, they will do. They're on a roll and there's no stopping them. Apple CEO Tim Cook has said that he watched the entire third season of Ted Lasso on his company's Vision Pro headset, which I say good for him, because quite frankly, the third season of Ted Lasso was complete and utter shite, and I didn't get past opposite two. Amazon has updated Alexa, as I said earlier, with some AI capabilities. I'm going to be covering that next week. And Estee Lauder is expanding its use of generative AI to monitor consumer feedback in real time and streamline internal operations. By using large language models, Estee Lauder aims to analyze consumer sentiment on social media and call centers, and they can do this automated in a way that humans can't. Another good example of how AI is being used. And finally, if you're interested in who are the most influential people in AI, check out the Times magazine, who have released their list for 2023. Now, for all of these stories, the links and more, subscribe to the Wiser newsletter on Substack. The link is in the show notes. So that's all for this week's show on Wiser. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the like button, leave me a comment, check out the show notes, and remember to subscribe to the newsletter. That's the only way you're going to get to hear all of this stuff first and not be at the mercy of the algorithms on any of the social media platforms. I have this constant running battle on LinkedIn. Even though I have 100,000 followers, LinkedIn just sends it to 100 people, and I don't know why or what I've done to offend them. But the only way you can bypass the control of big tech is by joining a mailing list and getting their email direct to your inbox. So be sure to tune in next week for all things tech and business. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and remember, insight and information gives you leverage. See you next week.